Hey everybody, thanks for joining our devotion for tonight. I'm Josh, one of the ministers on staff.
I'm Junior Joseph. I was on the college age ministry.
Yeah, and who's your favorite NFL team, Junior?
Kansas City Chiefs, of course.
Hey, my guy. You know it. And because we're Super Bowl champions now.
Yep.
Right. Was there any point during the Super Bowl that you prayed for the Chiefs?
Yeah, probably after Mahomes, after he threw that second pick, I had to say a quick little prayer, had to get hopes high. Yeah. Did you pray at all?
I don't want to admit that I did,
yeah.
But I definitely was like in the back of my mind, like, God, please help.
Yeah.
Please help us out.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Being an athlete, football, basketball, track, especially during my track meets, you need one more throw to make it to finals. I say a quick little prayer, I want God to help me out, get me through the next round.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want God on their side, right?
Yeah.
God on our side, like, it helps us win arguments. If we can prove that God believes this way, it validates our beliefs, and getting God on your side, it like guarantees victory.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. And that's what brings us to the passage that June and I want to talk to you guys about out of Joshua chapter 5.
Yeah, so we're going over Joshua chapter 5, and it's Joshua getting ready to take his people into Jericho. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied. So you would think out of all the times when someone would want God on their side, or God would be on their side, it would be during this instance when his people are literally fighting back for their own land. But he literally says he's on nobody's side.
Yeah. You see, it's always easier to think about sides than it is people. So, like Alex Smith, for example, he was a quarterback for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a Redskins fan, but I'm an Alex Smith fan, and he got traded to the Redskins. And it's always easy for me to say, well, I don't like these teams, but when I start thinking about the individuals that are on them, isn't your boy, you have a boy that plays for the Broncos?
Yeah, my boy Devontae Harris, grew up with him in Wichita. Love the dude, went to school with him, but I'm not a Broncos fan, but yeah. I'm a Devontae Harris fan.
Exactly. So when we get caught up in sides, we're missing out on the individuals that are part of it. You see, Israel got it wrong. They thought God was for them, for their purposes, that they would conquer this land, that they would control this land, and they would occupy this land. But in reality, God was using Israel to be a light to those people. That was his purpose, and they got lost in all that. Over and over again, people miss out on that because they choose sides over people. Sides like political organizations and belief systems and groups of individuals, and we blanket statement who they are, and we miss out on God's real purpose, which is those people.
But wasn't God on Israel's side? Actually, God was using Israel to achieve his greater goal. God moves in and out of organizations all the time to use them as an example for his greater purpose. God doesn't side with the left or the right side. He's neutral. He loves everybody equally. He's never going to side with this one group of people to prove a point.
Thinking sides is always easier than thinking people. When we can lump whole groups of people into specific ideologies, we can dismiss them or agree with them a lot easier. But people are incredibly complex beings. They come from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. Their beliefs are shaped by so many different things over time. And when we begin to understand them, it's harder to see things simply as this belief or this belief. You look at the Samaritan woman, because Jesus always saw the individual. The Samaritan woman was a person who was a different, gender, race, belief system, political system than Jesus was. And for the most part, he didn't even address those things. He just met her where she was, loving her in that, and not asking her to change those things, but rather following him. Because he knows that following him brings about the real change that he's looking for. When we can reduce whole groups of individuals to just a few things, we miss out on what God's heart really is. God's heart is to change people, and in that changing people, they become more like him. When we start living life with people that are different than us, we begin to understand their perspectives, their stories, and how God is moving in them and what God is wanting to do through them. We become more complete as we start to share life with people that are different than us, and to get to see how God is moving, not just in my group, but moving in groups of people that are different than us. Just like we see God's purposes as the commander of the army talks to Joshua, isn't what Israel's purposes was. It was bigger than that.
Has your political views, the way you grew up, or your beliefs, is that holding you back from really getting to know people like how we should? I mean, God says it, Jesus says it, we're supposed to love each other. We're supposed to love thy neighbor as ourselves. But by us sticking with all these beliefs that we have, it's holding us back from really loving each other. So break down those barriers and get to know your neighbor. Take the time to get to know someone before you start judging them. Until we start doing that and breaking down these preconceived notions, we're not going to get anywhere.
The truth is, a lot of the issues that are facing us as Americans right now is incredibly complicated. And we live in a world that wants us to choose sides on everything. They want us to be in this camp or this camp because it's simpler. But in reality, Jesus always chose people over issues. And we know that God is doing something bigger and beyond what we see, like we see in the book of Joshua. That God was doing something bigger than even what Joshua himself understood. And so let's be God's people who are choosing to connect with people that are different than us by living life and understanding rather than just simply choosing a side. Because in that, we are really modeling Jesus to a world that desperately needs him. So thanks for engaging with us today.
Thank you.